Later we can train. Now.
Welcome class. Today our group will be presenting on intercultural communications, or more specifically, cultural differences and how it will affect your workplace performance. Before we start, I'd like to show you a short trailer on the movie that we're using as our case study.
There was nobody to be. There was nobody.
Might replace it. All you need to do is visit the call center and make sure the new guy's up to speed.
Pearl, I need you in my office.
Is this gonna take a while?
Tong decided to restructure order fulfillment, offshore the whole department.
We need you in India.
No, I'm not going to India. The train might replace it. All you need to do is visit the call center and make sure the new guy's up to speed.
Pearl, what is that?
Oh, that's just a cow. Must have wandered the tournament. Basically, you people need to learn about America. Hold your nose, flatten the vowels, like Chicago.
Chicago. What did you want?
Not a good time. Buddy, I assure you, I'm in Chicago. Yeah, right.
Bro, this place is a disaster. I'm stuck in India the rest of my life. My name is Todd. This is Toad.
Hey, Mr. Toad.
Mr. George, oh shit!
You realize you're not on vacation over there?
Yeah, like I would come here for vacation.
Listen, just a word of advice. I remember feeling like you do. I was resisting India. Once I gave in, I did much better.
It was a pleasure talking to you.
My buddy.
Some things I don't understand about American life. You hate your boss, and you don't like this company. Why not choose something else?
Why didn't you say anything?
What did you say? I don't know how this country works. Watch out! You must jump!
Hi.
Hi. I don't know how to explain it. In my world, it just makes sense to work your ass off just so you can have that 50-inch plasma.
So this is our movie that we have chosen as our case study. It's called Outsourced. Basically, it's about outsourcing. Yeah. And our main character, Todd, is a call center manager at an American merchandise company called Western Novelty. Financial savings in a lower international labor rate has motivated the company to switch to outsourcing. And when the call center top managers get outsourced to India, he gets assigned there as to train the replacement call center manager. And when he reaches India, he gets a huge culture shock. The places that everywhere he sees is dirty, is undeveloped, he has trouble communicating with people, there are strange customs that he has to adhere to, and most of all, the new call center is in a rural area, it's in a half-built building, and you can see like cows wandering in. The Indians don't find it weird, but for Todd it's something that you'll never imagine in an office setting. Todd believes that to sell American products, he has to make the employees behave like Americans. So his initial attempts at Americanizing the employees weren't very good. It wasn't effective, it was offensive, and he starts to get frustrated over the slow improvement in the performance. But don't worry, eventually, Todd learn more about Indian culture, and he managed to improve the performance to the target. And he starts to find more satisfaction in his job. So what did Todd do wrong initially? There is definitely intercultural differences between American and Indian culture, but Todd ignored that. This led to communication breakdown and deteriorating of interpersonal relationship. culture is a very important aspect of communication. While Todd and the Indian employees all spoke English, there were still many misunderstandings that arose. This is because there's difference in the cultural context and background between the Indians and Americans. Without addressing this point, Todd just tried to teach them more about American culture, but he himself ignored about learning Indian culture. Later on, Kavan will be talking more about this point. And another problem that Todd had was his solution to improve the performance was to Americanize the Indian employees. This is somewhat offensive to the Indian employees because by asking them to pretend to be Americans so that they can sell American products, it's like telling them that their Indian culture is not good enough. It's like invalidating their culture, their identity, their beliefs. So, by doing so, Todd is losing respect, is losing morale, and he wouldn't see any significant improvements in the performance. Now I'll pass it on to Benjie to further elaborate on this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. My name is Benjie, and today the content that I'll be covering for today is managing in an era of multiple culture, religion being an important aspect of cultural awareness, and religions in Singapore. In the initial encounter with the staff at the call center, Todd speaks to his Indian employee as if he was of a superior race. For example, he criticizes his Indian employee saying, "The center number are nowhere what it should be, and based on the customer complaint that we have been having, it's a culture thing. Basically, you people need to learn about America." He concluded the session by reminding them once again, learn about America. You want to sound American. So how would you feel if you're the Indian worker? You feel uncomfortable because why must you act or sound like an American when obviously you are not? Todd was unable to identify with the Indian culture because of the exotic difference, felt that he was superior to culture. Todd also ignored the fact that his Indian worker were actually native English speakers, just that they speak with a slightly different accent. Moving forward, religion is important in cultural awareness. As you may, culture includes many aspects. It includes languages, it includes foods, it also includes religions. So in another scene, Todd displays his ignorance about Indian culture and Hindu belief by discussing about one of the company product named the burger brand, which is a branding iron for the burger for steaks and meat. So responding to a question from one of the call center worker about the purpose of this product, he repulses his audience as he discusses about the cattle practices in America. So as you may foresee, this led to communication breakdown at work because cows are considered sacred in Hindu belief. Hence, for Todd to ignore about the culture of India, the Indian employee viewed him as being disrespectful to their religions. In another example closer to home, most of us will know that the Muslim will need to pray, to have Friday prayer. So if you happen to work in Singapore, where people are allowed to practice their religion freely, you must consider this as a factor when communicating to people from a Muslim background. This is because, for example, if you try to, for example, schedule a meeting to happen on Friday afternoon, he or she might assume that you're actually finding fault in him or her, and thus resulting in a conflict. The same applies to food. We have to show consideration for the Muslim who are not able to eat pork, or for the Hindus who cannot eat beef. All this is to create a more positive working environment where people respect each other. So, hence I hope that by bringing out these two examples from the movie, I hope you realize the importance of cultural awareness and how it plays an important role in intercultural communications. Perhaps in the near future, when you get to work with people of a different culture, from a different background, you will not end up upsetting the other party or amusing the other party. Now, before I pass my time to Kavan, let me ask you a very simple question. Ray, how do you actually pronounce these words? So the worker in the call center pronounce it as internet just like you, but how about the American? They pronounce it as internet. Next, Kavan will now explain to you on how language differences between two different cultures can result in misunderstanding in the workplace. Kavan, please.
Thank you, Benjie. I'll be talking about the language differences and how it will be applicable to the workforce in Singapore. And under language differences, I'll be covering on 3 topics: use of slangs, the pronunciation of words, and the different meaning of the words. In the movie, Tong actually introduced himself as what I really do is sell fish to rednecks, and now I have to train some other smarts to do it. And rednecks actually meant a rural white person, and smart actually refers to someone who is stupid. So for the driver over here, he actually had no idea what the words actually meant. He went on to clarify the meaning of it and write it down on his notebook. So as you can see, there are some slangs in Singapore also, such as paiseh, jialat, and sian. And we should try to refrain from using such slangs in the workplace, as it creates a barrier to understanding each other. And I actually want them to pronounce the words differently too. He wanted them to sound American and pronounce the words the American way. And the Americans actually apply reductions to their words and sentences. For example, internet, they actually say it as internet. And want to, they say it as wanna. For example, do you want to talk to me versus you wanna talk to me. So applying to the local context, we actually pronounce some words differently too. Say for example, children, we might say it as children. So it's actually a wrong pronunciation. So I think that Singaporeans should take note of their own pronunciations too. And then we should learn about the pronunciation of our foreign visitors so that we can understand them better. So there are different meanings for the same word, there are different meanings too. Say for example, this object over here, how do you call this object? Eraser or rubber? What about this table over here? Eraser. Yeah. But in India, they actually call it a rubber. And Paul actually went on to explain that it's called an eraser in America. As a rubber has a different meaning over there. It's actually a condom over there. So he told them to use this word eraser for it. And applying to a local context, we should learn about the difference in some of the words also. As in, for the same word, there can be a different meaning to different people from other countries. So by learning the difference in the meaning of it, we can understand them better and also allow us to avoid confusion when using these words. So I have thought about 3 points. The language differences, I thought about the pronunciation of words, the usage of slangs, and also the different meaning of the words. And also thought about the application to the local, to the workforce in Singapore. So now I hand over to Lim Wee to talk about the conclusion.
Thank you, Kevin. A very good afternoon to all of you. My name is Lim Wee, and now proceed to conclude our presentation. To reiterate, the professional communication topic that our group is presenting about is intercultural communication. And for this topic, we are using the movie Outsourced as our case study. In this movie, Mr. Todd's superior realizes that outsourcing can actually help the company to save costs. As such, he decides to send Mr. Todd overseas to supervise the outsourced call center. As Mr. Todd is being placed in an entirely new environment, coupled with differences in culture and religious background, unease and frustrations are bound to appear for him. Now let me recap what my groupmates have presented previously. This table here shows the problems that occurred because of Mr. Todd's poor intercultural communication skills and what he should have done instead. Firstly, he tried to force the American culture onto his employees. This results in objections and causes unease among his employees. Since his employees are mainly dealing with American consumers, it would be better if he could give them a lecture and brief and let them understand the American culture instead of forcing them to abide by it. Next, he didn't take into account the religious beliefs of his employees and thus unintentionally offended them. He should be more sensitive about the topic and be careful with his choice of words when communicating. Also, the slangs used in America and India are different, and this can actually cause discomfort. So he should refrain from using slangs as it creates a barrier for them to better understand each other. Next, Mr. Todd pronounces words differently, and this can actually cause confusion. He will need to take note of his own pronunciation as well as to learn that of his employees so that they can minimize the language difference and to help promote a better working relationship. Also, both countries, America and India, interpret the same word differently, and this can cause misunderstanding. So there's a need for Mr. Todd to learn how both countries interpret the same word so that he can be on the same page as his employees and help them out in their call center duties. And those of which was what my groupmates have presented earlier on. Now, from this case study, what we can learn from Mr. Todd is that, firstly, he listened to his employees' feedback, which helps to improve workplace experience. As you all know, communication is two-way. If you want your people to work hard, firstly, you have to satisfy them first. And next, he utilizes the reward system to motivate his employees. And the utilization of this carrot approach actually encourages people to work hard, because if you work hard, you get rewarded. Thus, there's an incentive for working hard. However, there are some things that he did wrong and we should all take note to avoid. He compared performances between his previous employees and his current employees, and what he actually did was this actually affected their morale as they tried to portray that America is better than India. Now, from this case study, our group learned that having good intercultural communication capability is an important soft skill for working in the 21st century, especially since all of us will be working in the environment of global context, and we will be meeting with and working with people of all nationalities and of different cultural and religious background. Thus, all the more we have to be mindful of ourselves in expressing ourselves so that we do not unintentionally offend them. While researching this project, I actually read out some advice which I'd like to share with all of you. Before saying anything, always ask yourself 3 questions. Is it kind? Is it necessary? And is it true? And then you all can decide whether or not you want to say it out. And I hope that this advice as well as our presentation will aid you all in a more effective intercultural communication. With that, we have come to the end of our presentation. Thank you for your attention, and I'm sorry that our slides, some of you was misaligned. Now we'll proceed to the question and answer segment. Do you have any questions for our team? Okay, if you all don't have any questions, can I ask Liang Ze? So do you think feedback is important in ensuring a good intercultural communication capability?
I believe it is quite important.
Why do you think so?
Because in your presentation you say that communication is a two-way approach. So I think by giving feedback to whoever you are working with, they can learn more about you. Yeah, similarly they also can give feedback to you. So.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
So what do you think we can do to ensure that we can increase our cultural intelligence? Because we all live in a globalized world, right? Yeah, and we all have to work in multinational companies, and there will definitely be interactions with people from different cultures, and therefore it is important for us to increase our cultural intelligence, right? In the past we have intelligence per se, which is IQ. But now we also have EQ, which is emotional intelligence. But increasingly, because of globalization and outsourcing, we also need to have cultural intelligence, right? Yeah. So your presentation is typically about awareness of culture in order to increase cultural intelligence. And therefore, in your opinion, how can we increase our cultural intelligence?
I think that we should interact as much as possible, especially before we enter the workforce. And one good place to do that is during university, especially when we join clubs and society. We should talk to people from other nationalities too, so that we learn about their cultural differences, maybe their slangs and the way they pronounce different words.
We are very fortunate that Singapore is a place where we have a lot of opportunities to interact with other cultures. So I think all we have to do is to keep an open mind when we interact with them, learn more about them. And if we have the opportunities, travel widely to meet more new people. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sure maybe some of you might have actually traveled overseas for attachments and immersion programs. I mean, NTU is very good in that sense. It gives you that kind of an international exposure. So based on your own experience, how did you try to be more conscious or be more aware of the culture around you so that you can minimize miscommunication interculturally?
One thing I learned when I was overseas last semester was that firstly, like when we grew up in Singapore and like when we interact with people that are not speaking like Singlish and our kind of slang, we tend to have prejudice against them. And I realized that if you want to interact with people, firstly you have to drop off that prejudice, which means that it's the perspective that counts. And this actually helped me overseas.
Prejudice? What do you mean? So supposing you speak with an American and the American doesn't have a Singlish slang?
No, as in like in the in the States, right? So basically, if you are not speaking like them, they will think that you are not one of them, and as such, you are like the minority, and they tend to be prejudiced against you.
But that's your perception of them, right? So you go overseas. So you're saying that it's their perception. You became aware that that's the kind of perception that they have of the other kinds of people, or it's your perception of them?
I come to realize that that's their perception of us because of their negative experiences or encounters with the other people that are not Americans, especially students who go overseas to study. And because of that, like it built on and like it made them like resent non-Americans. And I realized that one way to actually deal with that is that you must go in with an open mind, like what Kim said, and I think that communicating is a key. So you have to speak slower.
So what kind of prejudices do they display towards non-Americans or foreign students?
One way is the way you speak.
But how do you know that they are prejudiced against you because of the way you speak?
Their body language and the way they make fun of you, I guess. Like in classes and stuff.
Really?
It's like I observe it with my own eyes. So basically, but then something admirable was what the student did was he ignored it and he didn't take it to heart. And because of that, I think the person that made fun of him realizes that he shouldn't be made fun of.
So you mean the Americans actually made fun of a foreign student who spoke differently from him? Like maybe he had a funny accent or something like that. So what exactly did he say which showed that he was making fun of the foreign student?
That statement. Because we were doing something like programming. So it's like we're learning it may get a bit technical about that topic which I was studying was distributed systems. So we're talking about like election algorithms and stuff. In that case, he asked in America the system is if you got a question you can just raise up hand and you ask. So he asked question like if let's say I'm the leader and like B wants to overtake and blah and stuff, right? So like another student will raise up his hand and say, I'm sorry, can you repeat that question again? And he'll repeat again because he didn't get it. Although the lecturer gets it, he didn't get it. And after he repeats again, he asked the lecturer to repeat the question again because he couldn't get it, and he did in a mocking.
Oh, okay. So you felt that it was kind of like trying to make fun because he was implying from his repeated questionings that he didn't understand this foreign student because he has a funny accent.
Yeah.
Yeah, any other questions?
Thanks for your attention.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I hope you all take away something from this. Why did you say slide? You should slide today.